So the dog is in distress. We have missing time. Jessica's in distress. Jessica knows that Baby DeOrr is in distress. Everyone is in distress right here. But I figured he was laying in his double camping chair. Okay, this is after the fact, so now she's trying to add in information. DeOrr and I continued to look at the creek and found out that we could walk across some rocks to the middle of a section of land where the creek split. Okay, that is a location stamp. I haven't really talked much about that because we don't see it very often. But in this type of case, where you have someone in unfamiliar territory, you're going to see location stamps as well as time stamps. She probably doesn't really know the time right now. So she's actually marking her statement with a location stamp to a middle section of land where the creek split. That's what she's noticing. She can't notice the time, and so she has to notice the area. We crossed the rocks and walked along. We stopped to a section of the creek where there was some downed trees and some brush that was closing off some of the water flow. Why is this important to her? The creek's not flowing as fast here. The water's more still. The baby's in distress. This is probably where they want to try and splash water in his face, try and revive him right here. This is where they need to get to business. Because remember, Isaac just jumped over this whole part. All right, now we're jumping back over to Vernal's statement. We're at that same area. Everyone is in distress. Jessica and I went to the creek. I walked on a log in the middle of the creek, long-wise, and back, and Jessica was at the start of it when we went down the creek. Okay, so they're both talking about that same point in time. Let's keep in mind here, let's notice that in Vernal's statement, he's at 23 lines that Jessica and I went down the creek. So at least they lie the same way. They've been around each other enough that as they insert information into here, both of them are adding a bunch of extra information. And we saw that at the part where they bought drugs as well. So they definitely have similar styles as far as the way that they lie. Actually, everybody does, as long as your baseline is pretty normal. So Jessica was at the start of it when we went down to where it splits and goes into two creeks. Look at that. They both location stamped the same place. Now, do you think they coordinated that? I mean, that's a legit question. Do you think they coordinated that? Because why would they? Why would they coordinate down to the place where it splits and goes into two creeks? I don't think that they would coordinate that. There's no reason to coordinate that. It's not like coordinating that the baby stayed with Bob or coordinating the abduction story. They don't use this information in order to make you believe any particular thing. So that tells me that this is a location stamp for both of them. This is the location where everything happened. So let's keep going on Vernal's statement here. We crossed in the middle and walked down toward camp direction. Jessica was messing with a pole in the water. I stood next to her. Okay, we have an indicator right here that Jessica and Vernal are standing next to each other. This is the place that they location stamped. Let's keep going and see what happens here. Looked down and seen minnows that we, by the low water level, I told her Goob would love to see these, and turned around to go get him. There was a dead log. This is a really sad point in this story. What we have here is this is the location where Baby DeOrr died. He probably was in respiratory distress. He was throwing up. He started to aspirate the vomit and died. This is the part where everything comes together here. This is about an hour and a half after he was fed the gummies. We have a change of language here back to Goob again. The last time that we saw Goob was when he was fed the gummies. So that change of language tells you these are the key moments. Now, Goob for Vernal is his, again, I want to go back and say, I am not judging whether these are good or bad people. These are human beings, and human beings feel emotion, and they make decisions, and some are good and some are bad, and some people are pieces of shit and some people are not. Whether you're a piece of shit doesn't change the emotion that you're feeling at this moment here. So I don't think this was intentional. I don't think this outcome was intended. I would call this an accident based on stupidity. So because you have the change of language back to the word Goob, it's that nickname that is so innocent and so personal. This is the point where he died, that there were minnows in the water there. This is just so sad. This is burned into Vernal's memory here. And then he turns around and there was a dead log. Imagine why that was on his mind. Because reality seeps in. That's leakage. We have leakage here of the word dead log. That registered in his mind in that moment because of the situation at hand. And so he's not telling you the baby was a dead log. He's telling you he turned around and he noticed the dead log because of what had just happened. Now let's go over to Jessica and If you're feeling what's going on right here, it's not going to get any better on Jessica's side. Okay, remember in Jessica's statement where we left off, she says, and some brush that was closing off some of the water flow. So that's where they took him at that point. It was some still water where they wanted to try and revive him. As DeOrr and I stood there, we saw some minnows. Those minnows are burned into both of their memories in that location at that time. And DeOrr said, Goobs would love to see this. So she's also using Goob. He then turned around and headed towards a tree. So she doesn't say he was leaving. He then turned around and headed towards a tree that was across the creek. The creek is 3 feet wide. So this is what Vernal said was the dead tree. I put down my container of worms and put fishing pole. I put a worm on the hook and threw the line in. I cast out my line a few times, and in the distance, I could hear Vernal's voice talking to someone. Okay, let's keep in mind, in this moment, Isaac was somewhere. Remember, Isaac got all crazy in his statement about cutting out time and trying to remove himself from reality during this time. So Vernal walked, she makes it sound like he walked away, but he is, 10 feet away at this point, and she heard him talk to someone. Now she says, I figured he was talking to our son, Little Man. So our son is again an indicator, it's a change of language. She is still thinking of her son, Baby DeOrr, in duress here. Was talking to our son, Little Man, or my grandpa. She throws that in. I turned around to see if DeOrr and Little Man were behind me, and when I turned to look back at the fishing line, I saw something out of the corner of my eye move. When I turned my head to the right, I saw Isaac with a fishing pole and tackle box. At that point, so we have missing time right here, I heard DeOrr behind me yell. I turned to look at him, and he said, Goobs is gone. So we jumped back a little bit in time here, but Goobs is gone means that this is when he died. And at that point is the missing time here, is she's not telling you that that's when he died. But you have the change of language, and you have literally him telling you Goobs is gone. We can't find him. That's probably, we can't save him, is probably what he was saying. I said, what? And he repeated what he said. By then, panic set in. So you see how the words, when you understand what's happening, the words make sense, and panic set in. So he died. Isaac was there and saw this. So that's problematic. Now panic is setting in. What do? They have a dead boy with them, and they don't know what to do. It was an accident, but it was their fault, allegedly. This is my opinion. This whole thing is my opinion. At that point, if my theory is correct here, then they have a dead boy with them. That's their fault. So panic set in. Then I threw down the fishing pole and started running towards the rocks I could walk across. Once I got across the rocks, I ran up the bank to DeOrr. When I get to DeOrr, he said, your grandpa doesn't know where Goob is. So we have get instead of got, which means this is fabricated. This is in the wrong tense. So she's in the current moment, she's trying to add something in here. And so she says, and then she puts it in quotes just to help us out because it's a deception tag. So your grandpa doesn't know where Goob is. She just added that in there. Now she says, I started glancing around the campground to see if I could see Little Man, and then started walking to my grandpa. When I got to my grandpa, I asked him where he last saw Little Man. He then pointed over to a tree and said he was right there sitting in the dirt playing with his boots. Okay, so we have this statement that's added in. It's fabricated. Now, we know it's fabricated for numerous reasons. One is that the grandpa says he never said that, and we know what's going on here. I didn't count them at this point, but we're probably somewhere around 58, 59, 60 lines. So this is all still being fabricated here. We still haven't gotten to the point where they've called 911, which puts us at the 1 hour mark. So I started glancing around the campground to see if I could see Little Man. That's fabricated, obviously. She knows exactly where he is. And then she says, notice this, it's when I started walking to my grandpa. So she ran across the log, but now all of a sudden she's walking. Again, this is just added in information. As she's fabricating, she's not creating, she doesn't have enough time to complete a whole story in her mind. And so where she should have been running if it was in real life, because she's panicked, she's telling you that she's panicking, that she's looking for him, she adds in the word walking. So then DeOrr then started to search around the campground and yelling his name and nicknames. Okay, so we know that there was something with an EMT bag, and we know that DeOrr goes back up to the campground here. Most likely, in my opinion here, they were looking for the EMT bag. And I don't know what ends up happening with that because Vernal refuses to answer that question in the interview.
About the EMT bag, that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I know social media can be a good thing, but it can also
That's
be a bad thing.
We just
one
don't
of the
want
walls
anything
we're going up against.
twisted.
Yeah, we don't want to twist it. So clear up any rumors that you've seen or heard.
We need to,
We've-
we need to
One-
talk about that.
One thing that
We
concerned
want to
me,
get to that. What's most of the biggest rumors that are going around is, I mean, I have heard everything from why you would make a rumor that has to do with a 3-year-old is if you're not going to help, please don't. If it's not helpful.
Yeah,
this is a 2, almost 3-year-old we're talking about. Please help us. But I've heard everything from, I am a truck driver.
And so we don't know actually what happened with the EMT bag, but I'm guessing that it got torn open and they were probably looking for Narcan. If it's an EMT bag, they were probably looking for Narcan and they probably didn't find any. Okay, let's jump down to Vernal again because we're getting a little bit ahead of Vernal's statement here. So he says, I walked along. When I came up the bank, I was about 20 yards from Bob and my son's empty chair next to the fire. I yelled, okay, he says yelled, which is a change of language. And then he puts it in quotes. Where is DeOrr, my son? He said, I mean, they're not doctors. So at the point where he loses consciousness, he's not breathing, he doesn't have a pulse. They were in the creek trying to revive him. Then they pulled him to the shoreline, which is where Isaac walked past here. And now it looks like Vernal has ran up to the camp to try and find the Narcan. I yelled, where is DeOrr, my son? He said, I thought he went down with you guys. I said, and then he crossed out that information. I don't know what he said in there. Down that way towards the upper campground. He said, yes. I turned and looked. He was not around. I looked to Jessica and yelled, we can't find Goob. She said what? Okay, so now the stories are overlapping a little bit here. We can't find Goob. He said Goob is gone. And then she said what? Repeated, and I started to the upper camp and yelled, and after a few minutes, Jessica and Bob came up. This is when he's looking for the Narcan. Went by the creek and up, and I went back, and Jessica and Bob were looking up between the upper and lower camps. Jessica and I said, we need to call 911. Bob said, no, he's here. It's only been 20 minutes or so. I told Jessica I was going for help and ran for my truck. So at this point, he has gone and jumped in his truck and taken off. Why? Did they think that there's a possibility of reviving him because they were looking through the EMT bag? Did they give up? Or did he think that he was going to jump into his truck and drive to get help or something, and then realize right away that they are way too far away for him to get help and get back? And so let's jump over to Jessica's statement again and try and pick up at the same point in the timeline. I started walking around the campground and down by the creek looking for little man. After searching the creek, DeOrr and I decided it was time we called 911. So we have 2 missing time statements here. I fully expect that. We're like, I don't know, 60, 65 lines into this. And there's a lot of actions going on where they're not telling you what they're doing because they're looking for an EAD paddles or Narcan or something that can revive him. They're figuring out if they can take him to a hospital. There's probably a lot of things that are going through their minds here that she's leaving out. As we were searching a little bit more, we got to the upper campground and I thought I heard little man say mama. How difficult is this? How terrifying is this? Now that you know, or you know what I believe happened here, while Vernal was looking for the EMT bag or any way that he could help him, Jessica went running about halfway there to see if Vernal was able to get something, and the baby was unconscious, and she thought she heard the baby say mama. That is something that is going to haunt her for the rest of her life. And I took off up the hill to see if I could see him. So she ran back to him to see if he had somehow come to. When I couldn't see him, so when she got back to him and he was dead, he was still there, I went down the hill towards DeOrr and we finally decided that it was definitely time to call 911. That makes sense. DeOrr said he was going to drive down the road so that he could get service. I walked back to the campground and grabbed little man's blanket and pushed it in our dog's, Missy's, face while DeOrr went down the road. When I told Missy to go find little man, she took off towards the creek where I followed her. She took me along the creek and then back up to the campground where she took off down the road towards where DeOrr went. I checked the camper and Suburban for little man with no results. So this is just an added in statement. It's meaningless. because they're going with an abduction story, she has to occasionally add in stuff that sounds like a missing person's case. And so you're going to see little blurbs that look like just random information that doesn't fit. It's called out of sequence information. This information is out of sequence because it's fabricated and it's meant to look like part of the abduction story. So she thought, I'm going to rub, it would sound right if he's missing, that she would rub in the dog's face and so the dog could pick up his scent. I mean, the dog already knows what he smells like, but that's added in here to help the abduction story. Then I decided that I needed to check the creek some more. So when she says check the creek some more, she means she's going back to check on him to see if he's still there, he's still dead. Keep in mind that this isn't a movie. This is real life. So in a movie, someone dies and you just forget about him, oh, we need to bury him, whatever. This is a mother who is going to continue to go back and keep checking on him. When I came back from the creek, DeOrr came up the road asking me if I had found him yet. So probably asking if anything had happened, if there was any change. When I told him no, he started searching the area again. My guess is he probably started CPR or trying to revive him, something like that, which is the missing time here. After 5 or 10 minutes of searching, DeOrr said he was really going to call 911. When he left, I tried to call my mom. Okay, so he left, drove down the road, came back. So he tells her that he didn't call 911, and I actually don't think that in this situation that he's necessarily lying here. I think he may have took off at that point when he couldn't find anything in the EMT bag that would help. He took off down the road, maybe to get reception, to try to call. He was thinking to try and call EMT. And then my guess is that once he got down there, he saw a place where he could stage the body and decided, I need to make a decision here. I know he's already dead. So do we call EMT? Do we call 911 and say, our baby's sick, we need help? Because he's probably thinking they're going to test him and they're going to know that he got drugs. All this is going to fall on us. We're going to go to jail. And it probably turned in during that first trip down the road. His mind switched from getting help to how do I handle this situation with a dead body? And then he came back and talked to Jessica about that. Then she says he was really going to call 911. Now, Jessica gives us a bunch of lines here about calling her mom. I tried to call my mom to see if I could make a call and for her to understand me. I tried to call her 5 times before the call went through. When my mom answered, I told her a little man was missing and we couldn't find him. She couldn't understand me because I was crying and panicked. So she yelled at me and told me to calm down so she could understand me. When I told her what was going on, of course, I'm sure this happened. I'm sure she was freaking out because her son just died. So when I told her what was going on, she told me that I needed to call 911. I hung up with her and called 911. So did she tell her mom the truth? Did she tell her mom, look, we accidentally gave him gummies, he passed out, he stopped breathing, what do I do? What do I do? She said, okay, well, you got to call 911. Maybe she didn't say that. It's hard to tell because she made the call to her mom, and it's quite possible she was looking for help on what to do there. This is 83 lines. We are up to 83 lines here. And remember, 9 lines is deception. I told the dispatcher what was going on. So this is when she made the call at 2:36. I told the dispatcher what was going on, and she told me my husband was on the other line with them. When I was done talking to her, I took everything out of my pockets and threw them into DeOrr's truck in the passenger seat. So we know that she went with DeOrr the second time that he drove down there to get service. Now she says, when I got out of the truck and started heading towards the creek, so we have missing time. She got out of his truck. She likely has the body with him. And we find out from Isaac, but Isaac says twice that they went down to the cattle guard. So we're going to figure out from Vernal's statement where he says I drove half a mile down the road, and from Isaac's statement where he says they drove to the cattle guard, that on this trip right here, that's where they went. They went to the cattle guard half a mile down the road. They had the body with them, most likely. I don't know why they would leave it at the creek by itself. They're both in the truck. They don't want you to know that they're both together here, which means they probably have the body with them. So now she says started heading towards the creek. So they were going to go towards the creek by the cattle guard, probably to put the body down there, maybe hide the body. They started to go headed towards the creek. Now this is where I think they staged the body. So they knew they had to call 911 at this point. They had to figure out what their story was going to be, and they probably placed the body somewhere under, maybe in a shallow grave, something like that. And that's not going to be a permanent place because there's going to be search and rescue and stuff. They know that they're going with the abduction story, which means there's going to be a whole search and rescue effort. So they know they're going to have to do something, but they probably put him in a shallow grave, and is my guess. And then she says, I almost ran into Isaac. So now she has jumped all the way back. When you get a big chunk of missing time, there's a huge, huge problem here. So this big chunk of missing time is why I think they buried the body there. I skipped over the indicator, I guess, that is why I think they hid the body there. But she says, I almost ran into Isaac, which means she doesn't talk about anything that they did at the creek. She doesn't talk about them driving back. She never tells anybody that she was in the truck with him. But now she's back at the campsite and she almost runs into Isaac. Huge amount of missing time there. That means that they buried the body there. So now let's jump over to Vernal and see what's going on in his statement here. Okay, we're backing up a little bit. He says, so I went to the diamond in the road between the cutoffs and turned around thinking he's got to be there. He's little, he can't go far. So I flipped around and I seen our dog Missy in my mirror. I went back to where Jessica was and said, did you find him? Hoping she had. Hoping is inserting emotion right in exactly the right spot. That's something that is a hard indicator of deception because nobody does that in real life. I mean, it's insinuated that you're hoping that she had when you say that you're asking that. And so adding that in there is something that people only do when it's fabricated. Because in a vacuum, they're thinking, oh, let me add in that I was hoping that she had. That's something you read in a novel. She said no and crying, obviously. So I flipped back around and went a mile or so down the road and got service and called 911. So that's the end of Vernal's statement. Let's go back to Jessica here. So she says that she ran. So once she got back, after getting rid of the body or staging it, she runs into Isaac. He was coming up from the creek with his fishing pole and tackle box. When he saw me, he asked me what was going on. And I said, my son is missing. Have you seen him? And he looked past my right shoulder and replied no and walked around me towards the fire pit. Yeah, Isaac's probably like, get the f- out of my face, because he didn't sign up for this when he came on this trip, thinking he was going out to go drinking and smoking with Bob or eating edibles or whatever. I thought it was strange that he didn't seem to care or didn't even look at me, but I headed back to the creek to check the water again. So she's adding that in there because she's going to make Isaac try and make him look guilty or, suspect. I figured if little man saw where his dad and I were, he might have tried to get down to us and fallen in the creek. So that being in the creek is on her mind at this point. So she's already gotten rid of the body. So why is she going back down to the creek right now? To get rid of evidence. The search and rescue are coming. She needs to make sure that there's no boot laying around down there, that there's no, there's some talk about a boot at one point. So it's possible that when they got rid of the body, they realized that he was missing a boot and she needed to go find that. But there might have been puke around that scene. She needed to clean it up and get rid of any evidence that they were there at all. So I continued to check the creek and move things around in the water. What? Like, she's saying that the fake story isn't meshing with reality here. You keep getting leakage of her real story in here. She kept moving things around in the water. She's saying that she was looking for little man by moving things around in the water, like pebbles and stuff in the water. So she's moving things around in the water. That is what she's doing. Until I heard a four-wheeler or something pull up in the campground. After the engine sound stopped, I heard voices talking and I got out of the creek and started to walk towards the campground. So there's actually a substantial amount of time that she was down in that creek. It looks in her statement like it was a short period of time, but she was down there until search and rescue got there. And it must have taken them a while from the point where they called 911. For somebody to get there on a four-wheeler would have taken quite a while. So she was down there cleaning up, and then we have missing time after the engine sound stopped. So she heard them coming while she's cleaning up the scene right there, which is what she's cutting out. I heard voices talking. I got out of the creek and started to walk towards the campground. So why was she in the creek at this point? Even if she was looking for little man, why would she be standing in the creek? The creek's 3 feet across. So, and it's knee deep. So that's knee deep. I'm guessing that's about a foot and a half. So it would still, if you're looking for him and you thought maybe he was completely submerged in the water, it would still be better to not be in the creek looking for him. You'd still want to be standing on the edge of it. So the fact that she's in the creek means that she's just cleaning it up or cleaning vomit off of herself. If Baby DeOrr threw up on her, she might have been cleaning vomit, or she just got back from burying the body. So she might have been cleaning dirt off of herself, or who knows? Who knows? She was cleaning up. That's what we do know. When I got to the campground, allegedly, when I got to the campground, DeOrr was talking to a man from Search and Rescue. So at this point, Search and Rescue is there. And that's the end of her statement. So let's look. We got a couple more statements. We got the whole story, but we don't have it from everybody. So what was Isaac's role in all of this? Well, let's find out. And so Isaac's statement, here we have Isaac's statement up. There's a bunch of issues with it that follow exactly with our narrative so far. So was Jessica and DeOrr, Jessica's boyfriend or fiance at the time, were they at the campsite when Bob told you DeOrr was missing? He said,
Was Jessica and DeOrr, Jessica's boyfriend or fiance at the time, were they at the campsite when Bob told you DeOrr was missing? When he was pacing on the bank and you walked up, were they at the campsite?
When I went down there to talk, when I went up there to talk to Bob, no, they were already out looking for him.
says, when I went down there to talk, when I went up there to talk to Bob, no, they were already out looking for him. So he can't remember whether he was down in the fishing hole or whether he was up at the upper campground. He was at the upper campground because he says when I went down there. But he told you earlier that he was down in the fishing hole. So he's like, wait a minute, I said down there, so now I have to go up. Isaac doesn't have his story worked out as well. So you get much easier indicators here to unravel. So you and Bob search the immediate area. Me and Bob searched the immediate area right there for a little bit. His mom, we have an interesting change of language here. After the baby was sick and died, now Jessica is his mom. So it appears to me that Isaac liked Baby DeOrr, that he feels here that his mom should have taken care of him. Came from, I don't know, she was out in the sagebrush looking, and she came back to camp, and I talked to her a little bit, and I said, what's going on here? Like he's missing. Like he's missing, not actually missing.
So you and Bob searched the immediate area.
Me and Bob searched the immediate area right there for a little bit. His mom came from, I don't know, she was out in the sagebrush looking, and she came back to camp, and I talked to her a little bit, and I said, what's going on here? Like, he's missing.
Just keep in mind, he's very, you're getting a lot of indicators here because he knows what's going on, and he didn't have a direct role in it, but he has information about it, which is why he's so nervous here. Did she seem upset?
Did she seem upset?
Yeah, she seemed pretty upset. I couldn't really look at you in the face or anything. She hadn't been able to do that for a while. I don't know for what reason.
Yeah, she seemed pretty upset. I couldn't really look you in the face or anything. She hasn't been able to do that for a while. I don't know for what reason. All right, so she hasn't been able to look him in the face for a while. He's super sensitive about this. Obviously, that's a huge indicator of guilt, and that's something that left an impression on Isaac. DeOrr, Jessica's fiance, do you know where he went? He was in the truck, or was he on foot?
DeOrr, Jessica's fiance, do you know where he went? Was he in the truck, or was he on foot?
He was on foot for a while, and then he was also in the truck. He got in the truck too to go down by the cattle guard to go look for him down there too.
It says he was on foot for a while, and then he was also in the truck. He got in the truck too to go down by the cattle guard to go look for him down there too. When I first saw this, I thought, oh, that's where they buried the body. After going through this a bunch more, I realized that's where they staged the body because you get more of the story later. Now, did Vernal, Jessica's boyfriend, did he leave the campground in his truck to go call 911, or do you know?
Did Vernal, DeOrr, Jessica's boyfriend or fiance, he left the campground? Did he leave the campground in his truck to go call 911? Or do you know?
As far as I know, he left the campground in his truck to go look for little DeOrr over by the cattle guard.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I don't know if they left to go call it or if they called it from there with one of their cell phones. I don't know.
As far as I know, he left, that means under conflict, the campground in his truck to go look for little DeOrr. So we have little DeOrr again. That's the change of language. At this point, he knows that little DeOrr is dead. He's not. So technically, this could mean that he thinks that he's missing. So little DeOrr is a change of language. It doesn't tell us why. He just knows that Baby DeOrr's status is different. Over by the cattle guard. So he tells us twice that he was over by the cattle guard. But other than that, I don't know if they left to go call or if they called it from there with one of their cell phones. I don't know. Again, huge sensitivity around this. He knows they left. There's big conflict around that. He says it twice. He says by the cattle guard twice. Okay, did Jessica or DeOrr Sr. did they first say that he was kidnapped?
Okay. Jessica or DeOrr Sr. when did they first say that maybe he was kidnapped?
or that he was or something happened. I don't remember.
And Isaac says, or that he was abducted, or something happened, I don't remember. So he changes kidnapped to abducted. And then why did he change it? Why did he say that and then start to change it? And then why did he cut himself off? Because he couldn't remember what he was supposed to say. Isaac is not at the same level as most people intellectually. And so the story was that he was abducted. He remembers the story, but he said abducted when the question was kidnapped. So he cuts himself off. And then he says, or something happened, I don't remember. He doesn't remember what he was supposed to say, actually. Now, your last impression, the last time you saw Baby DeOrr, what was your impression of him that you can remember the last time you saw him? This question should be difficult for Isaac. So most likely he's going to try and say something along the lines of he was playing. The last time I saw him, he was with his grandpa, something like that. Let's see if he can get it out.
Your last impression, the last time you saw Baby DeOrr, what was your impression of him? That you can remember the last time seeing him?
That he was, having fun. Just like I said, he was just like a normal DeOrr, having fun, doing his thing, looking at different, exploring, looking at different things,
Or if he's about to have a mini stroke, another one. He says, he was, having fun. Just like I said, he was just like a normal 2-year-old having fun, doing his thing, looking at different, exploring, looking at different things, So we kind of got his story there, but all of the massive reduction of commitment tells you that he knows the last time that he saw him is not what he said he was doing. He wasn't exploring. He wasn't having fun. He was in trouble. Can you say 100% for sure that Baby DeOrr was up there?
Can you say 100% for sure Baby DeOrr was up there?
Yes, I can tell you that much that he was up there.
He says, yes, I can tell you that much that he was up there. Okay, good. Look, no indicators now. That's an easy question. Yes, he was up there. That's truthful. There's no reason to believe otherwise. All right, the last thing I want to cover from Isaac here is, do you think kidnapping is possible, that he was kidnapped? Now,
do you think kidnapping is possible, that he was kidnapped?
I can't say it could be possible too. It could be possible he was kidnapped, something happened, an accident of some sort. He needs, like I said, that DeOrr needs to be found, people need closure, so everybody can just calm down and everybody can, go back to their lives and everything. At least, let people know what's going on, that if they can find him or what, it'd be nice.
this was a very key part of this for putting this entire story together for me, because before I was able to figure out the drug thing, I kept looking at this statement right here. Isaac sighs. I can't say. I can't say means he has information that he can't tell you. Then he starts to repeat it. I can't. It could be possible. 2, it could be possible he was kidnapped. Something happened. So we got a bunch of indicators. I can't say. And then he says it could be possible. Is a reduction of commitment here. So this very problematic. Possible he was kidnapped. Something happened. An accident of some sort. So an accident of some sort is not a kidnapping. Kidnapping is not accidental. It was an accident of some sort. So it was some sort of accident. He tells you that he has knowledge that it was some sort of accident. He needs, like I said, DeOrr needs to be found. He, people need closure. So everyone can just calm down and everybody can, go back to their lives and everything, at least, let people know what's going on. So he is a mess in this statement. Just a ton of It's a reduction of commitment. What he's saying here is that he wants everything to go back to normal. This was an accident of some sort, and that it has turned his life upside down, and he wants his life to just go back to normal. The only way that's going to happen is if Baby DeOrr is found, so that people can get closure and so that everyone can calm down. So that is not something that you would say if you were aware of a murder. but it is if you were aware of an accident. The last statement that we're going to look at here is from Vernal. It's technically both Vernal and Jessica together here. I started looking at this case 2 weeks ago. This was the first interview that I looked at. And so I was about 3 minutes into this interview when I had a very good idea of what happened here. So the question is, so take us back, DeOrr. Was it Friday? This interview happened on Monday. So we're talking, this is about 72 hours later. He says, I'm not sure what day it is today. That is a terrible answer. That tells you right off the bat, was he trying to be funny? Like, that's a very problematic answer. So then today's Monday, it was Friday. Then Jessica says it was Friday.
All right, DeOrr, so take us back. Was it Friday?
Yes.
I'm not sure what day it is today.
Today's
Yeah.
Monday. It was
It
Friday.
was Friday.
Friday at about 2:26 is when was it
It
2:26?
was 2:36 when I called.
It was
Search and
2:36 is when she called, and I was in the truck hauling down to the road to try and get service because I didn't think one bar would get it. So she got very, very lucky. I was blessed that she was able to get service because I didn't want to try and risk getting halfway through my talking to the 911 and have it cut off. So I went down to where I knew I can get a little service about a half mile down the road. We searched after about 20 minutes and in a dead panic, not knowing where he was in such a small area and never being there, I knew I was in trouble. So we decided to call search and rescue, and that's when I drove down.
DeOrr says Friday at about 2:26 is when was it 2:26? Jessica says 2:36 when I called, and he says it was 2:36. So we got a double timestamp on 2:26, and we got a double timestamp on 2:36. And if you're thinking, well, Jessica said one and then DeOrr said one, it doesn't matter. DeOrr repeated it because it was pertinent to him. This tells me right here that something major happened between 2:26 and 2:36. He double timestamped it for you. He made sure that both of them were double timestamped. So, because we know the call happened at around 2:36, the body was hidden between 2:26 and 2:36. Is what he just told you right here. Now, how can we figure out where the body is? Well, let's take a look at the statement. It was 2:36 when she called, and I was in the truck hauling down to the road trying to get service. Because I didn't, that's an explanatory plus a negative, that's a lie. Trying to get service, that's a lie. Because I didn't think one bar would get it. So, explanatory statement, sensitive. She got very, very lucky. I was blessed that she was able to get service because I didn't. Now we have a repeating because I didn't. So that's an indicator of deception, and then the repetition is an indicator of deception. So we have 3 indicators of deception surrounding because I didn't. So that the trying to get service is an absolute lie. I didn't want to try and risk getting halfway through my talking to 911 and have it cut off. Okay, well, that's just a stupid thing to say. So it's not an indicator there. It's just an indicator of stupidity. So then we have and that's the 4th explanatory statement. I went down there to where I knew I could get a little service about half a mile down the road. Okay, he's half a mile down the road. He says, we searched for, and then he cuts himself off. Remember, Jessica says that she got out and left and threw the keys and wallet into the passenger side. So we know Jessica was with him. And he starts to say we, and he cuts himself off because pronouns will always give you away. He cuts himself off and then says, after about 20 minutes. So DeOrr and Jessica were searching for 20 minutes. The body was in the truck. What were they searching for? They were searching for a place to dump the body. After about 20 minutes, in is a repetitive statement that indicates sensitivity, a dead panic. Now, that's, again, we have the word dead. That's leakage. He already knows that the baby DeOrr is dead at this point. Obviously, the body's in the truck. So, but the word dead keeps slipping into his statement here. In a dead panic, not knowing where he was in such a small area, what he really just said there is not knowing where to put him in such a small area. They were in a small area there. They didn't have a lot of options to choose from of where to put him. And not knowing, never being there, I knew, so never being there means they were in an unfamiliar place for him. For Vernal, he doesn't want to be in an unfamiliar area. He needs to have a plan. He needs to know where to put him where it's safe. So it's causing him a tremendous amount of panic right here. He tells you a dead panic. Never being there, I knew I was in trouble. I knew I was in trouble.
I knew I was in trouble.
So he knew he was in trouble. Why would you, this is called a confession. I knew I was in trouble. There's a confession right in this little section right here. Then he cuts himself off. He says, and he cuts himself off. So we decided to call search and rescue. And that's when I drove down. She tried getting a signal out. Soon as I got a hold of them, they told me she was on the other line. Okay, so they drove down the road. They were down the road for 20 minutes searching for a place to put the body. He knew he was in trouble. They were in a dead panic. They were panicked with a dead body, and they staged the body there. So we have a bunch of statements here. Let's just figure out how some of these statements work in. He's pretty small for his age, but he moves pretty good, and that was our concern. He was right with us. Where it's at, I thought it would be perfect to go camping there because it's enclosed by walls of mountains and there's not much space around there that he could go. Our biggest concern was the creek, which was knee deep, a few feet wide, but he's a little guy. They finally yesterday were able to put that to rest. So we have a couple of things here. He's sensitive about this part that he's about to go into. And you get that from the he, that's a repeated word, with us. So with is conflict. Where it's at, so this whole campground area, what his thought process is here is he's telling you he thought it was a good area because it was enclosed by walls of mountains, which means they're basically using the campground like a playpen, like a very, very large playpen. So why would they need a place that's surrounded by mountains? Well, they went there to get high. So that was the plan because they know they're not going to be able to watch him when they all get high. So they needed to be able to let Baby DeOrr just run around. But he also tells you, and our biggest concern was the creek. Of course, that's their biggest concern because if they all get high and then they just let the baby run around in this playpen that is basically just flat ground surrounded by mountains, the only thing that they have to worry about is the creek. If they're all high and out of it and the baby wanders away, as long as he doesn't fall into the creek, they know they're good.
And our biggest concern was the creek, which was knee deep, few feet wide, but he's a little guy. Yesterday, we were able to put that to rest. So he describes this creek as being knee deep, which is an awfully specific description of this creek. Normally I would think, especially if you were trying to fish, you'd say it was pretty shallow. Whereas knee deep, he tells us he was standing in the creek and that it went up to his knees, and that's why he describes it this way.
He also says the reservoir was a couple feet deep. So why do we have change of language here from measuring depth in feet to saying it was knee deep? Now there's this question here. We don't want to twist it, so clear up any rumors that you've seen or heard. And then someone behind the interviewer says, we need to talk about the EMT bag. And then Jessica says, the one thing that concerned me. And then Vernal jumps in here and says, we want to get to that. And he kind of aggressively stops her and cuts her off. And then he changes the subject and never goes back to the EMT bag.
About the EMT bag. That needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I know social media can be a good thing, but it can also
That's
be a bad thing.
We just
one
don't
of the
want
walls
anything
we're going up against.
twisted.
Yeah, we don't want to twist it. So clear up any rumors that you've seen or heard.
We need to,
We've-
we need to talk about that.
One thing that
We
concerned
we want to
me,
get to that. What's most of the biggest rumors that are going around is, I have heard everything from.
Why is the EMT bag important? And they were probably looking for Narcan in there, and that's why they tore it up. All right, I'm skipping over most of the stuff in this interview. They go over the story again, and the indicators in here are very similar to the indicators in their story. They tell the story numerous times, and the story that I get from it is exactly the same every time. I analyzed this whole statement. Every single indicator matches perfectly with the first one. So the last thing I want to show you is this. This is big. If you've been waiting for a big bombshell, here's where I think the big bomb comes in. Do you plan to maybe hold a vigil down here? I guess maybe you haven't even thought about it, or kind of, do you want the community in Idaho Falls to rally? Now, they're from Idaho Falls. And he says, that's what we're not real sure. I don't, yet again, as a father who's very concerned with the whole family, will tell you guys, if we can get the whole state of Idaho up there, we'd love to. But in such a small area that's been combed and combed and combed, something may have been missed, but I don't know. I've been trying. I'm going to be getting with the Lima High County. Okay, up to this point, we know that he doesn't want people to mobilize anymore. He doesn't want people to go looking. He especially doesn't want people from Idaho Falls to go looking. So That's weird. I mean, aside from the fact that if your kid was missing, there's no circumstance ever where you would not want people to be looking. If one of my kids went missing, I'd be like, yeah, I want them mobilized. I want Washington State, I want California, Oregon, I want Canada to organize. I want everyone to be looking for my missing kid. But he tells you, it's been combed and combed and combed, you guys, don't worry about it. So why does he not want Idaho Falls to mobilize? Why? That's, in my mind, I'm thinking number one, obviously, the problem here, aside from the fact that he doesn't want people to look for his kid, he very specifically doesn't want Idaho Falls to mobilize. And then he says,
Do you plan to maybe hold a vigil down here? I guess you maybe haven't even thought about it, or kind of, do you want the community in Idaho Falls to rally? I mean, I know they don't want a lot of people going up there.
That's what we're not real sure. I don't, yet again, as a father who's very concerned with the whole family, we'll tell you, yes, if we can get the whole state of Idaho up there, we would love to. But in such a small area that has been combed and combed and combed, something may have been missed, but I don't know. I'm going to be getting with the Lehigh County Sheriff and the Salmon Search and Rescue to see.
So we hear him say, I'm going to be getting with the Lehigh County Sheriff and Snake River, the Salmon, Snake and River, Salmon Search and Rescue. So he says Snake River twice on accident. And I mean, I knew that was an important location because it's clearly on his mind and it's clearly very sensitive to him.
he says Snake River twice. It's in his mind right now. And why? Now, the search and rescue, they're talking about Idaho Falls, and yes, Snake River is right next to Idaho Falls, but Snake River, so the words that are stuck in his mind right now as he's trying to articulate are maybe Idaho Falls, because that was above, and then Lehigh County Sheriff in Salmon River, I think it's Salmon River, or Salmon areas. So Snake River is not something that should be on his mind at all here, but the verbiage tells you everything. And so he says Snake River, and then he says, Salmon, Snake and River. He says it again. It's so stuck in his mind right now. Now, this is the part where Caitlin was watching this, and she laughed when he stumbled over those words, and she said, his body's buried right there in Snake River. And I was like, hold on. We got to look and at least see where that's at. So we looked up on the map, and it turns out the area where Snake River bends around is the closest point to where they were at is right close to Idaho Falls. And so that's interesting. But I Google mapped it, and it would take driving the speed limit somewhere around an hour and 50 minutes. It's 130 miles. I said, no, when he went to the cattle guard, they were only gone for 10 minutes. That's, to drive 2 hours. I mean, if you're driving over the speed limit, let's say if you're driving like a bat out of hell, maybe an hour and a half. So if you're driving an hour and a half there, an hour and a half back, that's way too long. That's way outside the time frame for putting the body by the cattle guard, which is where I thought that the body was buried. And then after going through all of this and working with Carolyn from Crafty Thinking and working with someone named Grace who brought this all to my attention, I learned after the fact, I went back and I watched an interview of Bob where he mentions that Vernal went to use the bathroom at 2 o'clock in the morning and he doesn't know when he came back. And then there's another statement that a shovel was found propped up against the camper that next morning, Saturday morning. Nobody knows where it came from. They asked Isaac about it. Isaac's like, yeah, he always has a shovel, whatever. Isaac wasn't worried about the shovel, which means Isaac doesn't know anything about use of the shovel. But the shovel, I was thinking, wait a minute. If Vernal staged the body next to the cattle guard, then that should hit with the cadaver dogs. And the cadaver dogs, though, didn't find the body there, which means that Vernal may have moved that body from where he staged it and taken it to somewhere. If it's 2 a.m., he would have to be back by probably 5 a.m. Vernal does say it's extremely dark. It's so dark there that when they pulled in the evening, just turning night, he didn't even know that there was a porta potty there because it was so dark there that you can't see literally anything. So that means it's probably not going to get light until around I don't know, sometime between 5 or 6, I'm guessing, which means he would have about 3 to 4 hours from 2 a.m. And if he took a shovel with him, where would he go from the campground? And then I remembered he's a trucker. So let's look on that map and let's see where Snake River bends around. There's a little town there, and which you can see right here. And then, oh, look at that. There's a truck stop there. So Vernal's going to know that truck stop. Vernal is a trucker. He's a truck driver. So he knows all of the highways, all of the roads, and that little town right there is right next to Idaho Falls. Idaho Falls is just south of that. Now, where does Vernal keep his truck? I don't know where Vernal keeps his truck, but probably not at his apartment building. Most likely it's staged at a truck stop, and he drives to the truck stop, picks up his truck. So was his truck at that truck stop? I don't know, but it's worth looking into, because if Vernal left at 2 a.m., took him an hour and a half, by about 3:30, he could get to that truck stop area at Snake River. With the body, he could bury the body somewhere around. I mean, if you look up in this area here, Snake River bends around from that truck stop. There's a road that goes right in there into an area where there's nobody. It's just dead land in there, probably marshy because of the river. And Vernal's going to know that area because he knows the truck stop well. So he's probably been to that truck stop a bunch of times. That may even be where his truck is normally parked. So if his truck was there, he could have moved the body to his truck temporarily, or he actually buried the body somewhere near Snake River. Because he mentions that right here and fumbles over it a couple of times, it tells me that he's probably been there within the last day or so, because it's really stuck in his brain right here. Now that's interesting. That means the body could be, and think about this, if you were going to get rid of a body and there's a search and rescue there and you know they're going to search for a 3-mile radius, you're going to want to get that body as far away as possible. And that's exactly what he would have done. And you know Vernal likes to go places where he knows, because he said when they were staging the body that he'd never been there before, and that was causing him stress. So that tells me that he probably would like to go to a place that he knows. So he knows that he can drive right there. He knows right where to go, probably use the shovel to bury the body right next to Snake River there, turned around, drove back, probably was so tired from driving fast, from burying the body, that he just set the shovel up next to the camper and then tried to get an hour's sleep before search and rescue came. That's my theory. I mean, there's some stuff in the language that supports that, but no one in my analysis has asked him questions about where's the body. So without that, I can't narrow it down any farther, but that's my guess. So all of that being said, that is my analysis on this case. To summarize it, I think that Vernal didn't want to go there. It was a last minute thing. They ended up going there. Vernal was hot under the collar the entire time, but he was at least looking forward to getting there and getting high and relaxing. And they probably got the dealer's number from Isaac. Isaac probably had it in his phone. He's probably not handing out the phone number to them. I'm guessing Isaac called them, said his dealer, said, hey, these guys are going to come pick this up. This is their names. This is what they look like. This is what they're driving. And then they went and picked up the drugs. They thought it would be hilarious to give some to Baby DeOrr. Allegedly, again, this is all my opinion, but they came back. Baby got sick. They took Baby to the river. He died. And then they got rid of the body. And Isaac saw this shit show unfold and deleted his phone, factory reset his phone 3 times before the search and rescue got there. Why? Because he doesn't want his dealer to be dragged into this. He wants all his drugs or anything else that was illegal that was on his phone, wants it wiped off, because he knows that the police are going to be there searching, probably confiscating everybody's phones, probably looking the area, whatever. So there you go. That is, in my opinion, what happened. So I don't know what else to say other than that. I hope this was interesting for you. And now that I've looked at this case, if you have another case that you want me to look at, please let me know in the comments. I'm going to be looking at the Sandra Birchmore case now. Carolyn from Crafty Thinking is doing a deep dive on that case. As soon as I have some statements to analyze, I'm going to see if I can figure out what's true and what's not in that case, see if we can bring that case to a conclusion. And then, of course, I'm also working on the Delphi murders right now, which is also a very interesting case. So please, if you like this, like and subscribe. I'm going to be working with Carolyn on all of the cases now. She's going to do the breakdown of what's going on, talking about the legal aspects of it, what evidence has been found, that kind of stuff. And then I'm going to jump in and see if I can analyze statements and bring her cases to a conclusion for everybody. Like Isaac said, see if we can let people relax a bit and give people some closure on some cases here. So that's all I've got. Thank you to everybody who was getting information to me. You know who you are. Just remember, don't believe everything you see on the internet. Learn some of this stuff for yourself. Keep watching my channel. Keep learning how I do things. And when you start seeing people lie to you, be confident that you know what you're talking about. Call them out on it. Don't just go along with it.
Thanks for watching, guys. I will be staying behind the scenes working on transcripts, but I might pop into a couple more videos, and I might even start my own channel one day. So we'll see. Thanks for watching.